Hello everyone, Interact back here again with another episode of Entity Education. In this episode, we're going to be covering the oldest killer in Dead by Daylight, Adiris. I hope I pronounced that properly, now I'm never going to say it again. Probably better known as the Plague, because no one knows how to pronounce her name. As always, there will be timestamps up on the screen right now, and also down in the description of the video if you want to skip around to certain sections. Let's start off where we always do, with a quick overview of the Plague's base stats. She has the default killer stats, movement speed of 115% or 4.6 meters per second, and a terror radius of 32 meters. She is, I believe, the tallest killer in the game as well, which is both kind of neat and also means survivors can see you pretty easily because you kind of stand out. Now let's get into talking about the Plague's power, Vile Purge. There's a fair amount that goes into this one, so please strap in. The very first thing to know about Vile Purge is that, like a few other killers, such as Pig, certain objects will spawn around the world that will be a dead giveaway that you're playing the Plague. For the Plague, these are called Pools of Devotion, and they're pretty much what they sound like. They're little fountains that are kind of scattered around the map that have running water. These will come into play a little bit later on, but just kind of keep them in the back of your mind for now. Now let's talk about what Vile Purge will actually do for you. If you hold down mouse 2 by default, on PC of course, you'll start to charge up your Vile Purge. If you let go of mouse 2 after holding it for at least 0.25 seconds, you'll unleash a torrent of vomit, I'm not joking, in front of you, infecting everything that it hits. This can infect survivors, pallets, lockers, generators, windows, totems, chests, and even items on the ground or survivors who have already been hooked. As soon as a survivor is infected, they will get a sickly green vomity circle on their status icon in the bottom left of the screen. You won't actually be able to see how progressed they are, but all survivors will actually be able to see the progression of their infection as well as their teammates' infections, like kind of a few other things for killers. Note that you do not need a full charge of Vile Purge to use it. You can do it on a short charge if you want, and a full charge, which will take 1.5 seconds to do by default, will only scale up how long you spend spewing vomit all over everything, up to a full charge being 1.875 seconds of vomit spewing action. You are also not forced to vomit after reaching a full charge, much like the Huntress's hatchets. You can walk around with your vomit fully charged up for the entire match if you really feel like it. A neat little fact about Vile Purge as well is that you actually sort of stand up a bit taller when using your power, so you get a little higher of a point of view, and you can kind of vomit over some smaller objects a bit easier. You will be slowed down to 90% speed, or 3.6 meters per second by default while charging your Vile Purge, and you will be slowed down to 110% speed, or 4.4 meters per second by default while holding on to your Vile Purge. After fully unleashing whatever vomit you had charged up, you will enter a cooldown period, much like Hillbilly or Huntress, of 1.5 seconds, where you will be unable to do pretty much any other action other than moving around. So now you may be wondering, what exactly does being infected mean for survivors or objects? Well, you may notice that during the course of expelling everything out of your stomach, your Vile Purge is actually split into two separate projectiles. The code refers to these as the actual projectiles and links. The actual projectiles are what will be doing all of the infecting, and the links are just there to kind of make it look nice, I guess. Whenever one of these actual projectiles lands a hit on a survivor or an object, it will become infected. Objects will stay infected for 35 seconds by default. The links don't actually do anything. When a survivor is hit by a Vile Purge projectile, which will be vomited out every 0.03 seconds while you are spewing it all out, the survivor will gain 1.25 sickness and become infected. Anything that an infected survivor touches that can become infected will become infected, even just if they have the slightest amount of infection on them. This will all start to make sense in a moment, please just bear with me, I did say it was a bit of a lengthy explanation. For every second that a survivor is running, touching an object, be it a totem, a generator, healing somebody, etc., they will gain 1 sickness. If a survivor is walking, crawling around in the dying state, or just plain standing still, or crouch walking, they won't gain any sickness at all. Once a survivor reaches the threshold of 50 sickness, they will immediately become injured and permanently gain the broken status effect, which will show up in the bottom left for you, meaning you will know that they are broken and fully infected. This means that if a survivor for some reason just stood still and let you throw up on them, maybe they're into it, don't kink shame, it would take 40 actual vomit projectiles hitting them for them to go into the broken state. Once a survivor enters the fully infected and broken state, a few things will happen to them, in addition to being fully infected and broken. They will begin coughing loudly, emitting a small green kind of sickness aura around them, as well as vomiting every 5 to 15 seconds. All of the pools of devotion around the map will become highlighted in white for them as well. If a survivor chooses to, they can go to one of these clean pools of devotion and purify themselves in the waters of Lake Minnetonka, removing their infection, making them vomit one last time, and turning the pool of devotion into a corrupt pool of devotion, making it stream out some bloody mess instead of just clean water. Cleansing will take survivors 6 seconds to do by default, and they can be grabbed off of it. And once they do finish the 6-second channel time, they will become fully healed, it will remove the broken status effect, and it will notify the plague that someone has cleansed themselves with a loud chime noise, as well as turning the corrupt pool's aura into a visible white aura for the plague. If the plague goes up to a corrupt pool, they can press space by default, on PC of course, to slurp up the bloody water and transform their vile purge into corrupt purge. Drinking the bloody puke water will take 1 second to do by default. Doing so will give the survivors a bell noise, kind of sounds like a bell, notifying them that they're pretty much in for a world of hurt. If for some reason you choose not to slurp up all the bloody water, maybe because it's extremely disgusting, and all of the pools of devotion become corrupt, after 5 seconds, all corrupt pools around the map will become cleansed, and you will automatically gain corrupt purge, meaning you can't just cheese survivors into being unable to cleanse themselves by letting them corrupt every pool. Once you do gain corrupt purge, a few things will change. Firstly, the plague herself will give off a red smoke trail behind her head, which will not be visible to you, but will be visible to survivors, alerting the survivors to the fact that you have corrupt purge and not vile purge still remaining. Also, your vomit will become a blood-soaked reddish tint instead of the normal Rate My Exorcist cosplay green. Corrupt purge has the same properties as vile purge as far as slowing you down while charging it, requiring that 0.25 seconds of charge to be able to even use it, being able to charge it up more to get more vomit projectiles, etc. The major change with Corrupt Purge is that instead of infecting survivors when it hits them, it will instead do a single point of damage to them. Hitting a survivor with one of your Corrupt Purge projectiles will give them a 3-second super immunity to damage, and this resets every time they are hit by a Corrupt Purge projectile from the same vomit stream, meaning that it is physically impossible in Dead by Daylight right now to down a single survivor with 1 charge of Corrupt Purge. Using 2 short bursts of Corrupt Purge is much more effective. Corrupt Purge will last for 60 seconds by default once you've gained it. Becoming stunned by a pallet will cancel your Corrupt Purge entirely, reverting you instantly back to Vile Purge, so be careful if you're running around with Corrupt Purge. If you have charged up Corrupt Purge and your timer runs out, your vomit will become Vile Purge instead, meaning you can't just hold it right before the timer runs out and then run around and still be doing free damage to survivors. Now let's cover the add-ons you'll be able to equip if you're playing the Plague. Before we dive right into it, I just want to give a quick note about all of the Plague's add-ons. A lot of her add-ons will refer specifically to either Vile Purge or Corrupt Purge. If anything says Corrupt Purge, it will only affect your Corrupt Purge. But if it says Vile Purge, it will affect both Vile Purge and Corrupt Purge if possible. It's kind of like the old math rule that all squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares. Obviously, add-ons, such as ones that might increase the effectiveness of Vile Purge or infection times of Vile Purge on objects, can't possibly affect Corrupt Purge, since it can't ever infect anything. This all just comes down to the way that the plague is actually coded, but just keep it in mind when choosing what add-ons to run. It might say reduces the cooldown of Vile Purge, and you really want to use Corrupt Purge, it's still going to reduce your cooldown. We start off at the common tier with Prayer Tablet Fragment. Prayer Tablet Fragment will slightly decrease the activation time of your pools of devotion, and also slightly increase your movement speed while holding Corrupt Purge. This means it will reduce the activation time of your pools of devotion, not survivors, by 33%, bringing it down to 0.66 seconds to adjust the corruption, and increase your movement speed by 2.5% while holding Corrupt Purge, bringing you up to 112.5% speed. Next up, we have Oblanum Incense, which I'm probably just completely destroying the pronunciation of. This add-on that I can't pronounce will slightly increase your movement speed while charging Vile Purge. This means an increase of your movement speed by 7.5% while charging Vile Purge, bringing it up to 97.5%. Following that, we have Limestone Seal. Limestone Seal will slightly increase the infection time on objects. This means that it will increase the duration that objects stay infected by 5 seconds, bringing it up to 40 seconds total. And the final common add-on for the plague is Healing Salve. Healing Salve will slightly decrease the cooldown of your Vile Purge. This means a reduction to your cooldown timer of 0.25 seconds, bringing it down to 1.25 seconds. Moving on to the uncommon tier of add-ons, we start off with Prophylactic Amulet. Prophylactic Amulet will slightly increase the duration of Corrupt Purge. This means an increase of 4 seconds, bringing your Corrupt Purge duration up to 64 seconds. Then we have Potent Tincture. Potent Tincture will moderately decrease the cooldown of Vile Purge. This means it will reduce your cooldown timer by 0.4 seconds, bringing it down to a cooldown of 1.1 seconds. Following that, we have another cycle repeat with Hematite Seal. Hematite Seal will moderately increase the infection time on objects. This means a duration of 10 seconds will be added to your infection time on objects, bringing it up to 45 seconds. Next, we have Emetic Potion. Emetic Potion will slightly increase the effectiveness of your Vile Purge. This means it will increase the amount of sickness inflicted by your Vile Purge projectiles by 0.25 sickness, bringing them up to 1.5 sickness per projectile. Essentially, this just means that your Vile Purge will be 20% more effective. And the final uncommon add-on for the plague is Blessed Apple. Blessed Apple will make it so that the match will start with one pool of devotion already corrupted. That's literally it. Moving on to the rare tier of add-ons, we start off with Rubbing Oil. Rubbing Oil will moderately increase the charge speed of your Vile Purge. This means it will increase your charge speed by 100%, which doesn't sound very moderate to me, bringing it down to a charge time of 0.75 seconds to fully charge up your vomit. Then we have Infected Emetic. Infected Emetic will moderately increase the effectiveness of Vile Purge. This means it will increase the amount of sickness inflicted by your Vile Purge projectiles by 0.5 sickness, bringing them up to 1.75 sickness per projectile, essentially meaning it will make your Vile Purge 40% more effective. Next up, we have a really nice combo add-on, Incensed Ointment. Incensed Ointment will not only slightly increase your movement speed while charging Vile Purge, but it will also moderately reduce the cooldown of your Vile Purge. This add-on is basically just a combo of that one thing that I'm not going to try and pronounce again, and Potent Tincture. This means it will increase your movement speed by 7.5% while charging Vile Purge, bringing you up to 97.5% speed, and will also reduce your cooldown by 0.4 seconds, bringing it down to 1.1 seconds of cooldown total. Following that, we have Exorcism Amulet. Exorcism Amulet will moderately increase the duration of your Corrupt Purge. This means a 6-second increase to your Corrupt Purge, bringing it up to a duration of 66 seconds. And the final rare add-on is another apple, Ashen Apple. Ashen Apple will not only start off the match with one pool of devotion already corrupted, but will also slightly increase the infection time of objects. This once again means a 5-second increase to the time objects will stay infected, bringing it up to 40 seconds total, and the one pool of devotion starting corrupted is basically self-explanatory. Now moving on to the very rare tier of add-ons. Normally we'd have some unique add-ons, but honestly most of the Plague's add-ons are just kind of the old add-ons, but slightly better. We start off with Worship Tablet. Worship Tablet will moderately decrease the activation time of pools of devotion, as well as moderately increase your movement speed while holding Corrupt Purge. This means that it will reduce the time it takes you to activate your pools of devotion by 1 second, meaning you will just have a 0.1 second vacuum time, like basically every action in Dead by Daylight, and will also increase your movement speed while holding Corrupt Purge by 7.5%, bringing you up to 117.5% speed, which is kind of insane. Next up, another repeat in the cycle, Vile Emetic. Vile Emetic will considerably increase the effectiveness of your Vile Purge. This means that it will increase the amount of sickness inflicted by your Vile Purge projectiles by 0.75 sickness, bringing them up to 2 sickness per projectile. This all essentially means that your Vile Purge will be 60% more effective. Following that, we do have the sole unique add-on in the very rare tier, Severed Toe. Severed Toe will considerably increase the rate at which survivors gain infection from interactions. This means that survivors will gain an extra 0.5 sickness per second while running or interacting with objects, bringing them up to 1.5 sickness per second for both actions, making this basically a 50% increase in the effectiveness of your passive infection rate. While it does say interactions, it does consider running as an interaction, I guess. And the final very rare add-on is Devotee's Amulet. Devotee's Amulet will considerably increase the duration of your Corrupt Purge. In typical behavior fashion, considerably means 8 seconds extra will be added to the duration of your Corrupt Purge, bringing it up to 68 seconds, which doesn't seem very considerable to me. Now we move on to the Plague's ultra rare add-ons. Thankfully, we get to start off with the actually unique one, Iridescent Seal. Once again, this does not follow the naming convention set by Iridescent Head, thankfully. Iridescent Seal will moderately decrease your movement speed while holding Corrupt Purge, as well as tremendously decreasing the duration of your Corrupt Purge. What do you get for these massive downsides, you may wonder? Well, every time a generator is completed, your Vile Purge will automatically just become Corrupt Purge, which is pretty freaking awesome, to be honest. The downsides to this add-on, however, are that it is a 20-second decrease in your Corrupt Purge duration, bringing it down to only 40 seconds, and a 7.5% decrease in your movement speed while holding on to a charge of Corrupt Purge, bringing you down to 102.5% speed, which is just ever so slightly faster than survivors, meaning you aren't going to really want to hold on to Corrupt Purge very often. This add-on is pretty punishing in terms of downsides, but getting an extra 5 Corrupt Purges in a match is kind of fantastic. Do know, before you think this add-on is amazing and equip it, this does not only affect the Corrupt Purges you get from the generators being completed, but all of your Corrupt Purges. Meaning that if survivors are cleansing themselves and you sip that dirty red water because you're nasty, those will still only last for 40 seconds. And the Plague's final add-on, and her other ultra rare add-on, is Black Incense. Black Incense, while being an extremely powerful add-on, and I mean absurdly powerful, it's really just boring. Here's what it does. Every time a survivor throws up, you get to see their aura for 5 seconds. That's it. As I said, this is extremely powerful in terms of showing you where survivors are, especially if they stay infected, since as I said earlier, survivors throw up every 5 to 15 seconds. That means that even if you get hit with the lowest of low rolls of your RNG, you're still seeing the auras of survivors every 10-ish seconds, which is kind of insane. Running this add-on kind of feels like cheating sometimes, especially against survivors who just stay fully infected because they really don't want you to have Corrupt Purge. Let's dive into talking about how to play the Plague now. The Plague kind of has sort of the same issues as the Legion, in the fact that once you've fully infected most survivors, they're not going to bother to cleanse themselves and will just opt to stay broken and fully infected since Corrupt Purge is really freaking strong. This means in a typical match, once you've fully infected everyone, your power might as well just kind of stop existing. You are stronger than Legion, however, since once survivors are fully infected and broken, they just can't heal themselves. So they can't 99% themselves and then heal right before you hit them. They can't use insta-meds. They also cough and throw up frequently. Anything they touch gets infected. And all of that just kind of leads to extra tracking ability as well as shutting down things like adrenaline, heals, insta-meds, etc. As with the Legion video, I'll once again just give a real quick version of how you should play the Plague and then dive a little bit deeper into it. So the short version is basically just this. Get behind survivors early on in the game who aren't infected, charge up your vomit, coat them in vomit until they get fully infected or broken, or coat them in vomit and wait for them to run around and make themselves broken, and then just hit them with M1. Once they're all infected and broken, if they don't cleanse themselves, just play like a normal M1 killer, mind game your tiles properly, run your loops properly, etc. If they do decide to give you Corrupt Purge, slurp that shit up and just down them like a machine gunner, and then win. Let's delve a little bit deeper into some things about the Plague. As I said, the Plague is kind of straightforward, kind of like the Legion. They have some inspired designs over at behavior, but they don't really seem to work out the way that they might want them to, it feels like. As I stated earlier, survivors that are fully infected will give off that green cloud, as well as coughing and vomiting every once in a while, and you should use these to their fullest to get extra tracking on survivors. In addition to the normal injury sounds that survivors make, the blood that they leave behind, and their scratch marks, it can be really, really easy to find survivors when they're staying infected. You can also pay attention to generators, windows, chests, lockers, etc. to see if those are coated in infection. If you haven't thrown up on them, it means that a survivor has touched them within the past at least 30 seconds or so. If you want some extra tracking, and you're very keen on keeping an eye on the bottom left, you can throw up on generators when you pass by them in the early stages of a match, and this might either prevent survivors from wanting to touch them for 35 seconds, because they don't want to start getting infected and give you that notification, or they might just touch it anyways and then they've become infected and you know, hey, somebody touched one of those generators that I threw up on earlier. As the game progresses, however, if survivors are staying infected, this is just going to become completely useless. Another thing in the same vein is that if you infect a window or a pallet before the survivor uses them, they get that little extra bit of infection on them to get them closer to being fully infected and broken just ever so slightly faster. So you can use this during a loop on the early game or if they are somehow cleansing themselves and you haven't picked up Corrupt Purge. If you do manage to get Corrupt Purge, just know that you should be using it with basically as little charge as possible, since that super immunity they gain makes it so you are unable to down them with a single charge. You'll want to do it in short bursts to try and hit them, since this is kind of just the most effective way of using Corrupt Purge. Do a short burst, hit them, they get that super immunity, they get that speed boost, you kind of gain distance on them, then you do a short charge, hit them again, they're downed. You're also going to want to avoid pallets like the Plague, because a stun will kick you right back into Vile Purge and lose you any progress that you may have had left on your Corrupt Purge. A cool thing to know about the Plague is that your vomit actually does inherit your momentum. If you aren't sure what I mean by that, I'll try and kind of break it down into more layman's terms, I guess. If you're moving forward while vomiting, the vomit will gain the speed that you're going and go further than if you just stand still and vomit. This also works if you're backing up, which means that if you're backing up while vomiting, you can kind of alter the angle of descent to be closer to you and make it a little bit harsher. If you do this properly and you get really, really good at it, which is fairly hard to do, you can vomit over walls you might not normally be able to with the basic moving forward while vomiting. Mastering this can take a lot of practice and might not even be worth it, considering hitboxes in Dead by Daylight are like finicky at best. But just be aware that it's something that you can do. If you're moving forward, your vomit's going to go farther forward. If you move to the left, it'll go further to the left. If you move to the right, it'll go further to the right. If you move back, it'll come closer to you. It's something you can try and master if you want to do some cool trick vomit shots for your montages or something. And I mean, honestly, that's basically it when it comes to tips for playing the Plague. I think it sucks that for recent killers, behavior has kind of been putting out these super cool and unique ideas for powers, and then just kind of letting survivors be in control of when your power actually works the way you want it to or not. Obviously, with super strong things like Corrupt Purge, it makes sense. It also gives more dynamic choices to survivors, in kind of theory at least, since the option either always seems to be make the killer obscenely powerful, or just stay injured and don't heal, which just leads to survivors just working on generators instead of healing or wasting their time on other things, and they basically just ignore the killer's power for all intents and purposes. I mean, at this point, they might as well just make a killer who insta-downs you with an M1, and survivors wouldn't really notice a difference. But all of that's just kind of an issue for a different video. Let's get back to covering the Plague, and let's cover the Teachables you'll be unlocking if you put your blood points into the Plague. At level 30, you will unlock the Teachable for the perk Corrupt Intervention. Corrupt Intervention will make it so that when a match starts, the 3 generators that are furthest from you will become blocked by the entity for 80/100/120 seconds. This means that survivors will be unable to repair them in any way, shape, or form, and you also won't be able to kick them, but that won't matter because they won't be repaired. This perk can be okay on killers such as Hag or Trapper, who do have that kind of setup time at the start of a match before they can really start actually playing the game effectively. Other than that, it just buys you a little bit of time at the start of the match, and then just kind of becomes a dead perk. It doesn't guarantee that it will block off generators that survivors spawn next to, since it is the furthest ones from you, and not ones that are close to survivors, so don't mistake this for being a cool way to track survivors at the beginning of the match. They might have just spawned not near them. As I said, it does just kind of buy you time at the beginning of the match and then become a dead perk, kind of like everyone's favorite perk, Hex, ruined my game because the survivors found my totem in the first 5 seconds of the match, and now I only have 3 perks, yay! At level 35, you'll unlock the Teachable for the perk Infectious Fright. Infectious Fright will make it so that any survivor within your terror radius after you down a survivor with a basic attack will yell out, revealing their current location to you for 4/5/6 seconds. You do not get auras, sadly. You only get like the doctor scream notification bubbles that they keep reusing for things. You actually, funnily enough, did get auras back in the PTB for the Plague, and it was kind of insane. So I'm glad that they claim it was a bug. I think that they were just testing whether it would be stupidly powerful or not, to be honest. But I mean, on the other hand, having a nice strong meta perk to maybe shake things up in terms of builds might have been kind of cool. And of course, by shaking things up, I mean the nurse would have been even more oppressive, because having auras for 6 seconds after downing someone as nurse led to lots of slugging on the PTB, and yeah, they shouldn't have put it out with auras. They should just remove the nurse. And finally, at level 40, you'll unlock the Teachable for the perk Dark Devotion. Dark Devotion, which sounds like a metal band, will make you obsessed with one survivor, as well as making it so that every time you hit the obsession with a basic attack, your terror radius will go down to 0 meters, and the obsession will emit a terror radius of 32 meters and be able to hear that they have a terror radius on them. This effect can only be triggered once every 60/45/30 seconds, and will only last for 20 seconds. I honestly think this perk is kind of just a joke, but I'd love to hear some builds that you might have that might make it even remotely worth running. Given that it requires you to find one specific survivor out of 4, and then the effect is just that you lose your terror radius for like 20 seconds, I don't know, I just kind of avoid this perk, to be honest. Now let's talk about some perk builds for the Plague. As always, we'll start off with a build for new players, assuming that you've only put points into the Plague, and therefore only have the base killer perks available to alt killers, and her 3 teachable perks, and then move on to the meta perk build, follow that up with a that build, meaning a toxic build that kind of sucks all the fun out of the game, and round it out at the end with some good old-fashioned meme builds. Starting off with the new player build. Your build might look something along the lines of this: Whispers, Corrupt Intervention, Infectious Fright, and Distressing. Whispers gives you tracking to know where you should be patrolling around to find survivors, and is especially helpful at the start and end of any given match, or if survivors are trying to be extremely immersed. Corrupt Intervention is basically just there to stall out generator progress for about a minute or so at the start of the match, making it potentially easier to find a survivor to start chasing with Whispers, since it cuts off the amount of area that you actually need to patrol. Infectious Fright and Distressing work together to give you an idea of if any survivors are nearby to either vomit on them or just walk up and slap them after you've downed a survivor with one of your basic attacks. Moving on to the meta build. Everyone's probably sick of hearing it at this point, but the meta build is the basic M1 killer build: Barbecue and Chili, Hex Ruin, Enduring, and Spirit Fury. After you've given the survivors all of your lovely vomit, your power becomes pretty much useless unless survivors make the mistake of cleansing themselves and giving you Corrupt Purge. I know that I recommend this build on a lot of killers, but honestly it's kind of just the best combination of perks for killers available in Dead by Daylight at the moment, because it gets through pallets the quickest, slows the game down potentially the most, and allows you to just kind of get into chases and end chases as fast as possible. A few other perks you may want to consider running if you really dislike that build are Blood Warden. I know it might seem odd for me to recommend Blood Warden, given that I've kind of talked trash about it in the past, but bear with me here. When the match starts to come to a close, I notice a lot of survivors will cleanse themselves. I'm not sure to make their adrenaline proc or whatever, or they're just afraid of getting one-tapped off of the exit gate. With that in mind, if you manage to down a survivor and get them on the hook with the exit gate open, you can trap them in the game with you and maybe even multiple Corrupt Purges for a solid minute, and maybe just like get a surprise 4K at the end of the game without even having to run NOED. Discordance can be a nice tracking perk for finding multiple survivors either at the start of the match to get the ball rolling on the vomiting on everybody, or for finding multiple survivors midway through the match to get another nice snowball going because you just slap them with your sensor? Yeah, she has a sensor, that's right. Knockout can be a pretty strong perk on the Plague if you plan on doing a lot of slugging. Since she does have the ability to basically keep everyone within a single hit of going down, you can get some really good use out of Knockout if you are okay with doing the whole slugging business thing. And the final one might be a little divisive, but Thanadophobia. Despite the fact that I literally always talk about how garbage this perk is, it can be kind of decent on the Plague, and maybe not for the reason you might be thinking of. For some reason, a lot of survivors, typically at lower ranks as well, kind of just panic whenever they see a red bar while they're trying to repair a generator. So, having Thanadophobia might actually lead them to cleanse themselves and give you easier access to your Corrupt Purge. As I said, the actual effects of Thanadophobia itself, the 4% per whatever, is pretty laughable, but you might actually be able to use it to kind of slightly nudge the survivors into cleansing themselves and letting you Corrupt Purge all over their faces. Normally, at this point, we'd cover a that build, meaning a toxic build that kind of just sucks all the fun out of any given match when it's being used. Thankfully, Behavior has kind of seen the error of its ways in terms of design after the whole Legion release debacle, and hasn't really put anything too stupid on fun into the game since then. So let's just move on to the best part of the video instead: meme builds! The first meme build I could think of would be the obvious one, the "please do gens, you're just making me stronger" Plague, or something along the lines of that. You're going to want to bring the add-ons Iridescent Seal, and then either Worship Tablet if you're worried about the speed loss from Eerie Seal, Devotee's Amulet if you're worried about the loss of Corruption Duration, but keep in mind it isn't that much, or maybe even like Incensed Ointment if you're worried about being slowed while charging up the vomit, and the cooldown being a little kinda heavy. When I was theory crafting this build a while back when the Plague had first come out, I figured the perks that I would probably want to run would be something along the lines of Barbecue and Chili, Hex Ruin, Whispers, and Brutal Strength. I dropped Enduring Spirit Fury combo because when you have Corrupt Purge, you're never going to want to get stunned by a pallet, because then you lose your Corrupt Purge, and you're already limited enough in its duration. So instead I swapped in Brutal Strength for breaking pallets faster, and Whispers because honestly most survivors get like real scared when they're remaining broken and infected and they hear that you've somehow still got Corrupt Purge and you got that red smoke streaming out of your headdress, so they're gonna try and hide, and Whispers can help you find them. Honestly, you can run whatever perks you feel are best, it's just the build that I found to be the most efficient for me personally. I know a lot of people, for some reason, don't like Whispers, even though it's like one of the best perks in the game. And the other meme build I could think of would be something along the lines of, okay fine, don't cleanse yourselves, I don't really care anyways, Plague. We're working on workshopping the name for that one. For this, you'll bring whatever perks you feel like running, and then the add-ons Blessed Apple and Ashen Apple. This way, even if survivors decide that they want to be smart and stay broken and infected, you still have 120 seconds of Corrupt Purge just kind of waiting around for you in case of an emergency. You do lose out on a lot of benefits from her other add-ons, such as lessened cooldown times, increased your movement speeds, but having 2 Corrupt Purges just kind of waiting around for you to break the in case of emergency only glass can be pretty helpful, and also kind of gives you the full use of her dual power. And that's it for this episode of Entity Education, covering Adiris, I probably pronounced it wrong again, probably better known as the Plague. As always, all of my social media links and whatnot are up on the screen right now, linked to my Twitch channel as well, where I stream Dead by Daylight 4 days a week, are on screen, description. Click them if you want to, ignore them if you don't. I'm pretty sure everyone who's on YouTube and actively watching videos like this probably knows what they all are. The next video is going to be covering one of my favorite franchises killer, Ghostface. The video for the Freddy rework is going to have to wait a little bit since I'm not sure if they're going to release any early nerfs or buffs to him after he comes out from the PTB. And I also have to wait on the data mine info and kind of take a little bit of time to get a feel for how to actually play him before I start actually giving advice on it. Thanks as always for all the support I get on this series. I seriously appreciate it, guys. I never thought it would actually even get this far, and it keeps growing somehow. I'll see you guys in the next video with my boy Ghostface. Goodbye for now.